Hi, in this video we are going to talk about how to set up a project in ACES using DaVinci Resolve. First, we are going to explain what we need to do in the project settings inside Resolve to start working in ACES with raw or compressed files. Then, we are going to import these different type of files inside Resolve to start working with them in an ACES framework. Before diving into Resolve, let's explain briefly what ACES is. ACES is a color management framework designed by the Academy of Motion Pictures. One of the main goals is to provide color consistency through all the stages of production by providing a standard color transform for major cameras and display types. To achieve this objective, ACES standardized an ultra-wide gamut and high dynamic range color space that can hold all the colors that the human eye can see and more dynamic range that we can currently capture or reproduce. An important aspect of ACES is that it is a scene-referred color space. This differs from display-referred color spaces like Rec 709 and Rec 2020, which are based on the colors of a display. Instead, ACES images represent the colors in the actual scene. One of the advantages of working in an ACES pipeline, because it is scene-referred, is that we can do all of our work in the scene and simply map our project to different target displays like HDR and HDR while maintaining the creative intent of the grade. Another key benefit of ACES is its interoperability. Since ACES is a free open source standard, it is implemented in all major color grading and VFX software. Having a standard like ACES for image exchange also helps reducing noise when moving files from one vendor to another. When you use ACES, it's like everyone is speaking the same language. It helps to solve the problem of when you receive an image from someone else and you have to ask, how do I view this? If you know it is ACES, you know how to view it. ACES was standardized in SMPTE as ST2065-1. The standard states that ACES images must be encoded in scene linear, and it also defines the color primaries of that wide gamut color space, also known as AP0. AP0 is mainly meant for archival and file exchange, since it holds all the color information and dynamic range captured from the scene. While AP0 is great for exchange and archival, it is not necessarily the best choice for colorists and VFX artists when applying legacy color grading tools, such as lift, gamma, gain, and doing certain VFX operations like CG rendering. This is why the Academy also defined a second and smaller set of primaries, known as AP1, which in combination with the transfer function create other three color spaces for different use cases: ACES-CC and ACES-CCT for color grading, and ACES-CG for VFX work and CG rendering. As you will see, both AP0 and AP1 are used internally in Resolve when configuring an ACES pipeline. Let's take a deep dive into an ACES pipeline. Like any other scene-referred framework, ACES must normalize all the assets entering the pipeline. We do that by applying an input device transform. The input device transform standardizes the specific attributes from any source into ACES 2065-1 or scene linear ACES AP0. After the sources have all been transformed and normalized into ACES 2065-1, images need to be mapped into the desired working color space for grading, for example ACES-CCT. ACES-CCT is where we recommend to perform all grading operations inside Resolve, since it's the color space that feels more natural to colorists. As said before, ACES-CCT has a smaller set of primaries called AP1, and it also changes the transfer function from scene linear to log. After all our creative nodes, Resolve converts the already graded ACES-CCT images back to ACES 2065-1 or AP0. This way we make sure that no information from the scene is lost during the grading process. Since we cannot view ACES 2065-1 in a monitor, we need to map the resulting ACES 2065-1 images to the display in front of us by using an output device transform. This allows us to view the ACES images in a display technology. The ODT always has to match the color space of our display. And that's how you configure an ACES pipeline. First, you transform the footage from your camera or other sources to enter in ACES using an IDT. Then, the software internally converts ACES 2065-1 images to the working color space, ACES CCT, where we do our grading. And finally, we can preview those images by mapping the resulting ACES 2065-1 images into the monitor using an ODT. And I promise you that despite this explanation may be a little bit too technical, this is very easy to set up in Resolve. Let's create a new project, we call it ACES. Click on Create and then open the project settings window. You can find it in the File menu at the top of the interface. You can press Shift 9 or you can go to the small icon that looks like a gear in the bottom right side of the interface. Inside the project settings, we are going to go to the color management menu and we are going to select in the color size option ACES CCT. ACES is constantly improving. In the ACES version, we are always going to select the latest one, which at the moment of this video release is version 1.1. If you are watching us from the future, it's possible that a newer version of ACES is available. Now, we need to select the IDT and the ODT. First, we are going to modify the ODT to match our reference display. If we are working in SDR and you are using a reference monitor calibrated to Rec 709 BT1886, we are going to select Rec 709. But if we are going to work in HDR Dolby Vision, such as when you are working for a Netflix production, we need to select P3D65 and make sure you select the nib value that matches your reference display. Below, we are going to see an option called ACES Mid-Gray Luminance. This option only appears when selecting an HDR ODT. By default, this option is set up to 15 nit. We are going to leave this setting as is to ensure interoperability with ACES in other software. When we select No Output Transform, we are bypassing the ODT and Resolve will reveal the ACES 2065-1 image before the ODT is applied. Since ACES AP0 linear images are not supposed to be viewed on a display, we should only really have this setting selected when we want to export ACES 2065-1 images. For this video, because we are monitoring in Rec 709, we are going to change the ODT to Rec 709. In the IDT section, we need to select the color space from our main source. Resolve will divide the raw files automatically into ACES using the camera manufacturer's SDK. Because we are first going to work with raw files, we are not going to select an IDT. This assumes that all files entered in the project are either raw and get converted automatically or encode in ACES AP0 linear already. But if the primary camera captured in a compressed format, we then must select the corresponding IDT for that camera. Bear in mind that this setting can be overridden on a clip-by-clip basis in the media pool. Then we are going to find another option, Process Node LUT In. This option is only relevant if you are applying a LUT or LMT on the node tree. Depending on the nature of the LMT LUT you are applying, you should select one or the other. If your LUT is a creative LUT created in ACES CCT, select ACES CC AP1. This setting can be overridden on a node-by-node basis too. For more information about LMTs or look modification transform, please follow this link. Finally, we are going to find a checkbox with the name of Use Color Space Aware Grading Tools. This setting will enable DaVinci Resolve legacy tools such as Lift, Gamma, Gain, Curves, and Lock controls to be aware of the working color space, making controls feel more natural. We will check this setting and click Save. It is time to import some files. Let's move to the Media tab. In the Media tab, go to the Media Storage menu to find the folders with the files that we are going to use. We will navigate to the Training Working folders and we can find 4 different subfolders: RAW, Codec, Graphics, and ACES AP0. Those folders contain the different files we are going to use in the following steps. If you don't want to repeat this searching procedure all the time, we will recommend as a tip saving this folder as a favorite. To make this, we need to drag the Training Working folder to this favorite section. Let's select the RAW folder where I have the RAW file from different cameras and drag it under the master bin into the media pool. Immediately we see that the RAW files from our different cameras are correctly mapped to our display. The raw information stored in those files have been interpreted to ACES, and then with the ODT we selected, it was mapped from ACES to Rec 709 in order to be viewed correctly in my display. ACES is built for image to look good from the scratch. That means that if we see the colors technically incorrect, then something in our configuration is not right. Let's remember that compressed files are those that have RGB values baked in, as opposed to RAW files, which holds all the information captured by the sensor of a camera and remains uninterpreted until we debug them on a color grading software. This is why we can still modify parameters like temperature or exposure in the software. Now, let's check something we briefly explained before. We say that ACES automatically maps the RAW files into ACES. Let's check if that is true. Let's right-click in any of the imported files in the media pool and we will notice that we don't have options to change the IDT. Now let's move to the Color tab when we already have a timeline. Let's open the RAW palette and change the decode using to clip. And we are going to notice that our clip is in ACES linear and we cannot modify that option, but we still can have some of the unique features of the RAW files we talked about before. This is great because ACES assists us in deciding one of the most difficult settings when working with RAW files. That is how to correctly set up a color space and a gamma curve. ACES make color management easier. Now let's do the same with compressed files. Let's drag the codec folder from the media storage into the media pool under the master bin. Now we notice that the file looks strange. The colors don't look technically correct. This is because they are compressed files and we need to assign them an IDT. If we want to find more information where these files come from, we can click on the metadata view at the top right of the media pool or open the metadata menu in the right part of the interface. Here we can see the name of the video file and check some of the camera and capture details. In this case we have an Apple ProRes 422 file, but this really doesn't tell us much about the color space. Different cameras like ARRI, RED or BMD can record in this codec. This means we can have different color spaces encoded under this codec or format. To be sure we're applying the correct IDT, we need to check the camera report from set. A good tip is to separate the files in different folders depending on the camera. If there is a main camera in your production, then it makes sense to set up your project with a global input device transform. That way you don't need to tag every clip. In this case, since we have several camera sources, we will tag each clip individually. Let's right-click on this clip, go to the ACES Input Transform option and select the correct one, in this case Alexa, which represents ARRI log C. What about if we need to change the IDT in more than one clip? Let's select these clips and then right-click to see the ACES Input Transform menu and select Blackmagic Design 4.6K Film Generation 3. As a tip, if you want to see more information about the files and sort them based on any parameter, for example video codec, we can always sort clips in the media pool using the list view. Or we can do something similar, customizing smart bins with different searching criteria. How can we change the IDT if we have the files already in the timeline? Let's go to the color page. In the clips row, under the thumbnail of the clip, we are going to see a name. If you click a couple of times, we will see the name of the codec pop up. This information will help us to see the codec. Or we can press in the right part of the interface the metadata menu. When we know where the files come from, we are going to right click and then you see there's the same menu as before, ACES Input Device Transform, where you can select the correct color space and gamma based on the camera. In this case, we will select Sony S-Log3 S-Gamut 3. There are going to be some cases when we are not going to find the IDT in Resolve. For example, with ProRes Red White Gamut Log 3G10 files. What can we do in those cases? It will be incorrect to work without the proper IDT, so we can replace this IDT with a DaVinci Color Space Transform language. We can find those DCTLs on the webpage of the camera manufacturers on the internet or in ACES Central. Once we download them, we need to install the DCTL in Resolve. And to do that, we are going to go to the project settings, then to the color management menu, and open the LUT folder. In the LUT folder, we can create a new folder called IDT. And we will paste the downloaded DCTL into this directory. Then we are going to go back to DaVinci Resolve and click Update List. And we are ready to apply the imported DCTL. Remember, if you are in the 17 version, you can use a custom LUT path in the Preference panel in the General tab to add any folder in your storage as an additional LUT folder. In the color page, we are going to go to the clips row of the interface. Right-click the clip we want to apply the DCTL on, select the LUT menu, then the IDT folder we created, and there we will find the name of the DCTL we previously loaded and we will apply it to the clip. If we are using a custom IDT and we are loading it at the clip level, we need to be sure that no IDT is selected at the same time, since this DCTL is replacing what the IDT will be doing. Any LUT or DCTL applied to the clip is going to be applied before ACES CCT, so it will be applied in ACES 2065-1. What we can do with graphic files, let's import them from the media storage into the media pool. And as happened with the compressed files, the graphic files are going to look incorrect. To fix these settings, we need to change the IDT. We can usually assume that the color space from images created in graphic software such as Photoshop or After Effects is sRGB, since that's the color space of most computer monitors. Let's right-click the graphic file and change the input color space transformation to sRGB. What if we need to import EXR encoded in AP0 Lean, maybe from VFX or from another CGI software where the footage was already encoded in ACES? Let's import some footage like this. We will go to the media storage and drag the file into the media pool. If our input device transform in the project settings is defined as no input device transform, then Resolve is going to assume that the files are in ACES 2065-1, and we will see that automatically they look correct. In an ACES workflow, this is the expected behavior. Every file that is exchanged from one software to another must be encoded in ACES 2065-1, which means AP0 primaries, seen linear, and written in an open EXR image sequence. If the project is configured with a specific IDT, we can override this setting at the clip level, and we will select No Input Transform, which by now we know it means ACES 2065-1. There is a known issue in ACES 1.0 and is commonly known as the blue highlights problem. You can find a lot of information about this topic online, and there is a long thread in ACES Central. For example, in this case we see some artifacts happening in the highlights of this shot. In Resolve there is a built-in method to solve this problem. We just will need to apply the neon suppression LMT, that you can find it in the LUT folder by default. This LMT needs to be applied in ACES 2065-1. So as we know by now, we can apply a LUT in ACES AP0 linear to the clips on the media pool or on the clips row in the color tab. Let's right click in the clip in the color page, select the LUT menu and click LMT neon suppression to see the difference. As you notice, working in ACES in Resolve is quite easy and straightforward, but one needs to be mindful of having a correctly mapped color pipeline. Hopefully this video has provided enough context on what ACES is and how to work with ACES inside DaVinci Resolve. See you soon.